What do you remember about your first communion? This is Father Jonathan Meyer, and we are on day 23 of 33 days to Eucharistic glory, which means that we only have 10 more days left. This is amazing. Thank you for persevering. Unbelievable. Okay, so what was the day of your first communion like? Because today's chapter is called the Last Supper. So I think it's often interesting to think about the first Mass was actually the Last Supper. So the first and the last, right? The first time that Jesus ever celebrated Mass was the Last Supper. And it's the Last Supper because, of course, the Last Supper is the institution of the representation of Calvary. The reason on the night that he was betrayed, he gave us the Eucharist is because every time we celebrate Holy Mass, it is the ability for us to enter into the one perfect sacrifice of Jesus on the cross and the empty tomb. It's not that he dies again. It's not that he rises again. It's the fact that we are able to enter into that one perfect sacrifice and reality. So what was your first communion like? I love First Communion Sunday. It brings me so much joy. All of these children that are so excited to receive Jesus. It's powerful. One of the things that I always preach on First Communion is I preach about the patron saint of First Communicants. His name is Saint Tarcissus. And they gave this young little boy the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus to go to a prison to give Holy Communion to those who were in prison. This is in the early church in the city of Rome. You can actually go to the catacombs of St. Callistus, and they have a chapel there to St. Tarcissus. And but anyways, he was beat up by some bullies in the city of Rome, and but he died holding on to Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. And then when the boys rolled him over, they found his hands were empty. And the pious legend goes that Jesus actually miraculously disappeared from his hands in the Eucharist and took his soul to heaven. And so he's a patron saint of First Communicants. And I always tell the young children that we are giving you the greatest and most treasured possession of the church. Today we are going to give you the most valuable thing that the church has, which is Jesus. And I try to make it very clear to them that like this tabernacle, this altar, this entire church building, everything that we have in the Catholic Church is nothing, absolutely nothing in comparison to Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. And that today, even though you're only 8 years old, we are going to give you the most amazing gift because it's Jesus himself. It is Jesus, and we're going to give you Jesus. And you they're so excited. That's why this quote from St. John Vianney: "There's nothing so great as the Eucharist. If God had something more precious, he would have given it to us." There is nothing so great as the Eucharist. If God had something more precious than the Eucharist, he would have given it to us. We say that God is love. We believe that God is love. He gave us on the night that he was betrayed his body, his blood, his soul, and his divinity. He gave us the ability to go to Calvary, to go to the empty tomb in the representation. Our God is amazing. And that's why it's so beautiful that we're consecrating ourselves to him, that we're giving ourselves to him completely because he's given himself to us. Once again, listen to this quote. There is nothing so great as the Eucharist. If God had something more precious, he would have given it to us. He gave us, there is no greater gift than the Eucharist, and he gives it to us. So what do we then, what's our response? What is our response to someone who gives us a gift? We do what? We give back. He's given us everything. So what is my response to that? Jesus, I give myself back to you. It's the only proper response. Jesus, you've given yourself to us. I'm now going to give myself back to you. It's beautiful. So beautiful. Spend some time today reflecting upon what was my first communion like? What do I remember? What do I recall? What did I wear? Who was there? Who gave me gifts? One of my favorite gifts of my first Holy Communion, by the way, is my grandpop, which is my mom's dad. He made me my first nativity scene. I love nativity scenes. I collect them. I have 140. It's no big deal. But what do you remember from your first Holy Communion? Because you had your first Holy Communion because of the Last Supper, which was also the first Mass. And realize that Jesus gave you the most precious gift that he has. And because he loves you, he gives it to you at every Mass. So let's get to Mass. Let's get to adoration. Let's get to prayer. Let's get to silence where we can make spiritual communions to be united with the one who loves us so much. It's amazing. Amen.
I don't know if you've noticed, but the world is a mess. America is divided. The church is in crisis. 50 million Catholics have stopped practicing their faith in the past 30 years. It's time to stop seeking worldly solutions to spiritual problems. There is something we can do right now. There is something you can do right now that can make a huge difference. Sign the petition to consecrate America to Jesus in the Eucharist. Click the button below and sign this historic document today. And remember, be bold, be Catholic.